What's wave flag and smile, smile, smile.
My lad was in this lot, you know. Came through all those years with hardly a scratch. I'm not saying he was a coward or anything. He was always up with his lads, always ready to do his bit. We just thought he was lucky. We used to get letters from him. At least we knew he was all right. Couldn't say much, but we knew he was all right. And they did look after them as well, you know. Even had their own supply of tickler's jam. Of course they had to shave every day and look after their boots. They weren't sloppy, there was discipline. My lad was in the Devonshire regiment. Well, a lot of them had known each other before the war, grown up together. Some of them worked up the mill, stove and paper mill. It was strange. As time went by, they had all sorts in with them. My lad told me that one of the soldiers was a chap from Wales, Martha Tybel or Tibble or some such. Of course, being from Wales, he was a miner, and he was reserved occupation, essential work. But as time went by, they had all sorts in with them. A lot of them knew each other before the war. They used to go to all the old county fairs, chucking around bales of hay, joining in the tug of war, trying to impress the girls really. They had a marvellous time.
Tom Pierce, send me your grey mare, all along down, along round, along Lee, for eyes are going to Whittingham there with Reggie Hawker.
Captain Reginald Hawker, once of the 1st Devon Yeomanry, killed in Egypt, 1917.
Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter.
William Barter, Army Service Corps. Still alive as far as I know.
That's no surprise, serving with that dodging lot. The ASC. Wait, boys, somebody's coming.
Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter, Harold Foley.
Soldier Harold Foley, 12th Trench Mortar Battery. They were all mates, you see. Poor old Harold died of his wounds up near Calais. Nearly got home, he did. He was just 23.
Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter, Harold Foley, Major Bailey.
Major John Bailey. None of them actually knew him, of course, him being a toff and all. He was master of the hunt and a territorial soldier before the war. The Royal North Devon Hussars. Major Bailey was taken ill in Gallipoli, he was. Died a few months ago, I hear.
Major Bailey, Arthur Horton.
Arthur Horton, 2nd Battalion, the Devonshire Regiment. Died of his wounds in a hospital near Boulogne.
Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter, Harold Foley, Major Bailey, Arnold Horton, Bernie Walk, Dick Blight, Dick Blight, Dick Blight, lend me your grey mare, all along down, along round, along Lee, our eyes are going to Whittingham there, with Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter, Harold Foley, Major Bailey, Arthur Horton, Bertie Walk, and old Geoffrey Seymour and all, and old Geoffrey Seymour and all.
old Geoffrey Seymour. He was their captain, you see, and my son. Only he wasn't that old. He went into the trench that day, told the lads there'd be a ceasefire at 11 o'clock. He thought they'd all be home by Christmas. Well, you can imagine. Or can you? Back home, we heard Lord George on the wireless making the announcement.
I am glad to tell you that the war will be over at 11 o'clock today. You are well entitled to rejoice. The people of this country and our allies have won a great victory for humanity. The sons and daughters of the people have done it. They have won this hour of gladness. Let us thank God.
All the bells were ringing. People were dancing in the streets, all getting ready to welcome their boys home by Christmas. And then we heard the news about our Geoffrey. 7 minutes. At 7 minutes past 11, our Geoffrey was shot dead. A sniper got him in the head. The news hadn't got round to everyone, you see, and not all of them believed it anyway. They thought it was a trick. Handing around the cigarettes he was. Some stupid bugger used the same match 3 times. They had a rule about that. Never use the same match 3 times. The first flame alerts the Hun, and the second tells him where you are. And if it's the third one, bang, you've had it. And Geoffrey was engaged, you know. They were so looking forward to getting married. Dorothy's a lovely girl. I don't think she'll ever get over it. It's like so many more. This is the cigarette case. We'll send it on to her so she'll have something to remember him by.
She already knew that Geoffrey had died, but it was when Mrs. Seymour sent his cigarette case. I suppose that made it seem so real for Dorothy. All day she sat on the grass with Geoffrey's cigarette case in her hand. She hardly noticed how the beautiful morning, golden and calm as autumn in Devon can be, turned slowly into a gorgeous afternoon. For hours she remained in that state of suspended physical animation, neither heat nor cold, hunger nor thirst, fatigue nor pain appear to have any power over the body. Afterwards, she told me that her emotions were totally illogical and led her to a conviction that Geoffrey's presence was somewhere with her.
But it was no use. Geoffrey was dead, and all at once, as I gazed into nothing, the words of the personal column advertisement that I had cut out and sent to Geoffrey 2 years earlier struggled back into my mind.
Lady, fiancé killed, will gladly marry officer, totally blinded or otherwise incapacitated by the war.
I even remember the words of the letter that I wrote to him at the time. At first, it is a little startling. Then the tragedy of it dawns on you. The lady doubtless has no particular gift or qualification and doesn't want to face the dreariness of an unoccupied and unattached old maidenhood. But the only person she loved is dead, and all men are alike to her now. It is a matter of indifference whom she marries, so she thinks she may as well marry someone who really needs her, someone who will need a perpetual nurse, and she, if married to him, can do more for him than an ordinary nurse, and will perhaps find relief for her sorrow in devoting her life to him. Hence the advertisement. I wonder if anyone will answer it. It is purely a business arrangement with an element of self-sacrifice, which redeems it from utter sordidness, but quite an idea, isn't it? I'm still just a girl, not yet a lady, and I certainly don't mean to go through life with no particular gift or qualification, but quite an idea, isn't it? Wasn't it, Geoffrey? Quite an idea. Oh, Mother, just stand still, darling. Let him surround you. You tell us. Oh, we're so proud of you. So proud of you. I haven't done anything, Mother. Just so sad you're here to help me. Now, really, there's a king still. How does that feel? That's fine, Mother. Let's just tie a nice bow here. Darling, smart. You look absolutely wonderful, darling. Let me have a look at you. Well done. Great. Take care. Thank you.
They put the screens around his bed. A crumpled heap, I saw him lie. White counterpane and rough, dark head. But those screams, they showed that he would die. They put the screens around his head. We might not play the gramophone, and so we played at cards instead, and left him there to die alone. The covers on the screen are red. The counterpane is white and clean. He might have lived and loved and wed, but now he's done for at 19. An ounce or more of Turkish lead. He got his wounds in Suvla Bay. They brought the Union Jack to spread upon him when he goes away. He'll want the three red screens no more. Another man will get his bed. We'll make the row we did before. But Jove, I'm sorry that he's dead. Goodness, Dorothy, am I thankful that shift is over. Oh, you did so well. You were so brave. Nobody expected you to come in today.
Not brave. No, I need to be working.
Well, then we won't talk about it. But what a shift, that rude petty officer Finney.
Oh, come on, Nancy. Remember what it's like when we first started? It wasn't easy for us VAD nurses, especially at first.
The regular nurses were horrible to us.
They said we were useless, couldn't make up a bed to save our lives.
Well, of course we couldn't make up beds, Dorothy. We have servants for that sort of thing.
Yes, but we soon learned and we showed them.
Yes, they were nothing for us, those nurses. Not after we'd been campaigning for the vote.
Yes, Mrs. Pankhurst was completely right when she said the argument of the broken window pane is the most valuable argument in modern politics today.
There will never be complete equality until women themselves help to make the laws and elect lawmakers.
That's the American Susan Anthony. But we won't get the vote until we turn 30.
It's a disgrace, I know. Mother had a letter from Robert last week.
What use are letters?
Near my mouth.
Oh, it's all right. It could have been worse, much worse. Did you hear about Mary Stewart in the village? She had a simply awful experience. Well, Mary became engaged to Tom Owens, the Millwall worker, just before he enlisted. Then Tom was killed in 1915. His mother told Mary, and then evidently one of Tom's friends, soldier friends, Albert Gray, had written a letter to Mary. And he must have spoken to his friends about Mary.
Well, then Albert Gray must have realised that Mary would get no official notification of the death.
That's right. He must have searched through his personal effects and found her address. But the simply awful thing is that his letter sought to conceal nothing.
Oh my God.
I was Tom's best mate. He was such a nice young man. Never had a bad word about anyone. He was well liked throughout the platoon. I'm sorry he has gone, miss, but take it from me, he felt nothing. He was caught in the head by a German sniper and never recovered consciousness.
I know, but it gets much worse.
Worse?
Yes. Well, then, Mary received a letter from Tom's officer, a Lieutenant Borrington, and being properly raised, Mary wrote to both Albert Gray and Lieutenant Borrington, simply wishing to thank them for the information, sad as it was.
Well, that was nice of her and brave.
Yes, but then, a few months later, her letter to Albert Gray was returned, marked killed in action. She then received a letter from a Mrs. Borrington of Exeter.
Dear Miss Stewart, I am the mother of Lieutenant Donald Borrington, and your letter to him has been given to me, along with his other belongings. I regret to inform you that my son was killed 2 weeks ago in Belgium. From the dates, it seems he died just a few days after receiving your letter of thanks to him.
So you see, all three of them were killed. Tom Owens, Albert Gray, and Lieutenant Borrington.
And God only knows how many more.
Oh, this blasted, horrible war.
Scream, nurse!
You thought we'd be home by Christmas, didn't you, Joe? Go on, admit it. Yes, it's you I'm talking to, Private Bates. We all thought the fighting had ended, and us soldiers, sailors and airmen would all be home by Christmas, to spend Christmas at home with our families. Well, that's what they said at the start of the war. We'd all be home by Christmas. That was 4 bloody years ago. We all thought the fight would be over, didn't we? Go on, admit it. November the 11th, 1918. Day the guns fell silent. But no, it was just an armistice. A ceasefire. Didn't get either you or me out of the army, did it? Not a chance of it. Taff was lucky though. He'd only been in France 3 weeks. Reserved occupation, you see. He was jammy. He got sent home to spend Christmas at Wales with his mum and dad. And where did we end up? Some horrible, dingy French town. I can't even remember what it was called. Funny thing though, it turns out it took Taff longer getting home than he spent out here with us. He had a bit of an accident on the ship going home. Water was really choppy and men were throwing up all over the show. Well, he tried to get up on deck to get away from the stench, and he slipped and fell down a stairway, broke his arm. Medical officer said it was a really bad break. Poor bugger. We had to laugh. He spent several months in the VAD hospital in Stowford. And where did we end up? Clearing these god-awful battlefields. I'd rather be down a coal mine any day. What is it, Joe? What's the matter, mate? What is it? Oh, you found another one of the poor buggers. Listen, don't worry, we'll dig him up properly and bury him with the rest. Tell you what, mate, why don't you go and have a rest? Go and have a smoke. I'll take over. Go on, go and have a smoke. Go on. I think he's a bit shell-shocked. 2 of his mates got killed yesterday, bullet in the head. Never found out where the bullet came from. I remember old Captain Seymour. He was one of the best. He only joined the army at the start of the war, just minutes into the ceasefire. Poor old Captain Seymour. Joined the army right at the beginning of the war, only to get shot minutes into the ceasefire. Proper bad luck that was.
How's it going, Sergeant Hannaford?
Oh, not so good, Lieutenant Westlake, sir. Joe Bates has been acting a bit strange these last couple of days.
Shell-shocked?
Could be, sir. Captain Seymour going like that really shook him up.
Sit down. Sit down, boy. I want to tell you something. Do you remember Lieutenant Hodgson?
Oh, I remember Lieutenant Hodgson, yeah. He's a proper gent, he was.
William Noel Hodgson. We called him Smiler. That was his nickname.
He wasn't
Smiler.
He wasn't from Devon, was he?
No. His family came from East Anglia. When he joined up in 14, his first posting was straight to us. All the officers liked him.
Oh, yeah, the men too. Everyone liked Lieutenant Hodgson. He was our bombing officer at the Battle of Lewes.
Yes. Many of us thought he ought to have been promoted for that.
Oh, he'd have made a fine company commander.
Yes. This is the interesting thing, Wally. I only found out a few days ago that William Hodgson had been writing poetry. He'd been published.
Oh, all I knew he was well educated.
Yes, it seems to have been writing for some time. I started publishing poetry early in 16.
I had no idea.
Well, kept pretty quiet about it in the officers' mess. Wally, it's one of his poems that really struck me.
Why, Mr. Westlake?
Do you remember the trenches on the Somme back in 16, before the bush?
Oh, I'll never forget them.
It was a lovely sight in front of us. Green fields and trees.
Yes, but we knew the German gun positions facing us. We knew the Huns were watching and guessed what damage they could do when we went over the top.
We did. Yes, we did. And so did Smiler Hodgson by the sound of it. This poem is called Before Action, and it was published just a few days before Smiler died. It's almost as if he had a premonition of his own death. Listen, Wally.
By all the glories of the day, and the cool evening's benison, by that last sunset touch that lay upon the hills when day was done, by beauty lavishly outpoured, and blessings carelessly received, by all the days that I have lived, make me a soldier, Lord, by all man's hopes and fears, and all the wonders poets sing, the laughter of unclouded years, and every sad and lovely thing, by the romantic ages stored with high endeavour that was his, by all his mad catastrophes, make me a man, O Lord. I that on thy familiar hill saw with uncomprehended eyes 100 of those sunsets still, their fresh and sanguine sacrifice, ere the sun swings his noonday sword, must say goodbye to all of this, by all delights that I shall miss. Help me to die, O Lord.
Arnold Battalion was one of the few British units to reach its objective on the first day of the Battle of the Somme.
But at what cost, Lieutenant Westlake? What cost?
775 soldiers attacked dawn on the 1st of July. By the end of the day, over half of them were dead, missing or wounded.
Our chaplain, Mr. Cross, had them buried in the old trench. What was it used to say?
The Devonshires held this trench. The Devonshires hold it still.
But we survived, Mr. Westlake. We survived.
Yes. All the Ivybridge men who fought that day survived too.
Many of our friends were killed and wounded. Too many.
And amongst them was my very good friend, Smiler Hodgson.
Dig light, lend me your grey mare. All along, down, along, round, along ye. For eyes are going to become fair. With Reggie Hawker, Billy Farter, Harold Foley, Major Bailey, Smiler Hodgson, Bertie Wall, and old Geoffrey Seymour, and old Geoffrey Seymour, and old.
Patients in now, Nancy. That was another 2 this morning. And, oh, I feel sorry for that Welshman Taffy. He had the accident on the boats on the way home.
And they always seem to send them to a hospital a long way from their home, don't they? There was that one this morning, Eddie from the Royal Field Artillery. I thought he was lovely, but that was ever such a rude joke he told about not having gunner ear. Honestly, you do learn a lot when you're a nurse.
Did you say it's going to be a street party in Ivybridge to celebrate the end of the war? Maybe you could invite Eddie, the gunner, just to make sure he doesn't exasperate his injuries, of course.
As if I would.
And what a coincidence with Taffy's platoon commander being your brother, and very well respected by all accounts.
Yes, it's funny. I believe there's been a mutiny in Dover. No, you have to be careful what you say, but I can't say I blame them. No,
I know.
They signed up for the duration, and now they might be sent out to Russia in all that cold. Might be a kindness to invite them to the party.
Yes, I mean the men, they got really worked up this morning about the war not being properly over.
That's right.
I mean, who can blame them? Because they are still here in full pay, and they just want to go home, and they're being sent out to help in Russia, of all things.
Yeah, that's right. First they go out there, and then they join up. They're sent here to convalesce. Now they don't know what's happening.
I know. Have you had word from your brother?
I have a letter in my pocket. I'll read it to you.
Dear Nancy, I am well and trust you are. I wanted to write to let you know what has been going on since November the 11th. What a day that was. Losing Geoffrey that way, just as he gave his men the news of the Armistice, was truly dreadful. God moves in mysterious ways. Andrew Dickens, he's a captain in the 16th Battalion, told me a funny tale. The day before the Armistice, his men marched into the Belgian town of Tournai. CO had a regimental band to play the Brabant song, their national anthem. As you may imagine, this was much to the delight of the townsfolk. Andrew said the population had buried a lot of food and wine to hide it from the Germans. And when the 16th marched in, they dug it all up to have a celebratory feast. What a tale. What about me, I hear you ask? Well, after the Armistice, I was on battle appearance for a while. Then I transferred back to our 2nd Battalion. We were all presented with a Croix de Guerre by a frog general. You must have read about it. It was all over the news. The first such award to a British regiment. Not that much reward for the battalion almost being wiped out in France. I felt a bit of a fraud, actually, because I wasn't there with them. I expect the folks at home believe the fighting is over, but it's not so. Major Northcott is preparing to sail to Mansk in the north of Russia with a company of men to fight against the Bolsheviks and cover the withdrawal of our troops there. I'm expecting some leave soon, Nancy, but don't tell Ma or Pa. I shall let them know myself, and I'll try to visit Mrs. Seymour.
Oh, I do hope Robert will be able to visit Geoffrey's mother, so I think she's not doing too well.
It must be very hard for her.
Yes, and hopefully he'll visit your parents as well.
It must be hard for the parents, that they were probably all looking forward to seeing their boys again.
One day.
It must be hard for them too, the servicemen, I mean. They sign up and then they're sent here and now they just don't know what's going to happen.
I know, I do really feel for them, and I know I can be, well, a little bit stern with some of them sometimes.
Oh, sometimes? Dorothy, you're positively always stern with them.
Am I? Really? I really don't mean to be. It's just, I find them a little vulgar, and I suppose I can get a little bit frightened of them sometimes.
There's no need to be frightened of them. They're only men after all. They're rough edges, perhaps.
Yes, rough diamonds, yes. You know, I like that new one, Evans. I think he's rather nice and really rather funny as well.
So is Eddie. I mean, Gunner Green.
Yes, they're all rather nice in their own way.
Except that rude petty officer Finney.
Oh, I know, he's awful, isn't he? No,
The rain is slipping, dripping down the street. The day is grey as ashes on the hearth. The children, they play with soldiers made of tin, while you sew row after row. The tears are slipping, dripping one by one. Your son has shot and wounded his small brother. The mimic's battles ended with a sob, while you dream over your scene. The blood is slipping, dripping drop by drop. The men are dying in the trenches' mud. The bullets search the quick among the dead. While you drift, the gods sift. The ink is slipping, it's dripping from the pens, on papers white and orange, red and grey. History for the children of tomorrow, while you prate about fate. War is slipping, it's dripping death on earth. If the child is the father of the man, is the toy gun the father of the crux? For Christ's sake, think. while you sew row after row.
Who's there?
Oh, it's only me, Mrs. Annisford.
Oh, come on in, dear, come in.
What are you doing there?
Oh, I'm just keeping an ear out. Mrs. Seymour's after having a visitor.
Oh, I've got a letter here from my boy Joe. But his writing, it do looks proper odd. Oh, I do hope you'll be home soon.
Well, let's have a look. I'll read it to you.
Dear Mother, I am very well. We are somewhere in France, but even if I write the name of the place we are billeted in, my officer will censor it. We are clearing the battlefields to make it fit again. Oh, Mum, you just can't imagine what it's been like for us. But I am bearing up well. We spent Christmas in a small French town, but now I can't remember what it was called. Good news, Mum. I have my release papers and I hope to be home soon. I am so looking forward to seeing you again. Give my love to my sisters and, of course, to you.
You're right, his writing is a bit off. But think yourself lucky, Kitty. At least your boy's coming home. Look at Mrs. S. After last year, 2 lads not coming at all.
I know. But 'tis been a long time, Ethel. Too long. Have you heard from Wally or your brother Joe recently?
Nah, he don't write much, does Wally. But he says he's all right, so, you know. And the last I heard from Tommy, he was up in Scotland clearing mines.
Ooh.
Says he thinks of me all the time.
Well, that does sound proper dangerous to me.
What, thinking of me?
No, don't be silly, clearing mines. Well, I best be going.
Yeah, come see you.
Oh, that letter's been my boy.
Open the door, please, Mrs. Hannaford.
Robert. But I didn't expect you in uniform.
I'm only on leave, Mrs. Seymour. I have to report back to my regiment in a week's time.
But I thought that everything was...
It's only an armistice, a ceasefire. It isn't really the end of the war.
I had heard that there was trouble in the ranks. Is that true?
Yes, some. There was certainly a mutiny in Falmouth in December. I don't know if it made the papers, but over 2,000 men mutinied.
Disgraceful.
But, yeah, Johnny Southgate and 5 other officers from the 3rd Devons were sent to restore order. But it's all calmed down now that Winston Churchill's taken over as War Secretary. Enough of all of this. How are you, Mrs. Seymour?
Oh, well, it's very nice of you to ask, Robert. Recovering. Yes, recovering. Much the same as you, I imagine. Do you know what I did in the war, Robert? Oh, of course you don't. I'm sorry you wouldn't know. I shouldn't have asked. Well, I collected sphagnum moss from the moor. with two very nice ladies from Totnes. We gathered some ladies from all over South Hams to help. And together we gathered, cleaned and packaged sphagnum moss. Tons of it.
And it was very useful as a wound dressing. Your work was indeed most important, Mrs. Seymour.
Was it? Was it really? I think you know why I've asked to see you, Robert. I had a letter from Geoffrey's commanding officer, a Lieutenant Colonel Fairweather. Do open it.
Yes, of course.
I sent this to Dorothy Hurst, but she returned it. Do read the letter, Robert.
Dear Mrs. Seymour, it is with the deepest regret and sympathy that I write to you about your son, Captain Geoffrey Seymour, who was killed in action whilst under my command. Geoffrey was a fine officer, popular with his fellows and respected by his men. If it is of any consolation to you, I would have you know your son was killed instantly. I have spoken with his men, and they are sure he did not feel a thing. Your son was gallant to the end.
What I want to know is this, Robert. When the Colonel writes, says that Geoffrey died instantly, didn't feel a thing, was he telling me the truth? Or is this what every officer writes and what every mother reads?
Mrs. Seymour, I do not know what every mother reads, but I am sure of this. His men told me he died instantly, and I'm sure his men would not lie.
Were you there?
No. I was called for, and I saw his body before it was taken away for burial. I'm sure he died instantly.
Dear Mrs. Cornwall, I know you would wish to hear of the splendid fortitude and courage shown by your boy during the action of May the 31st. His devotion to duty was an example for all of us. The wounds which resulted in his death within a short time were received in the first few minutes of the action. He remained steady at his most exposed post at the gun, waiting for orders. His gun would not bear on the enemy. All but 2 of the 10 of the crew were killed or wounded, and he was the only one who was in such an exposed position. But he felt he might be needed, as indeed he might have been. So he stayed there, standing and waiting under heavy fire, with just his own brave heart and God's help to support him. I cannot express to you my admiration of the son you have lost from this world. No other comfort would I attempt to give to the mother of so brave a lad, but to assure her what he was, what he did, and what an example he gave. I hope to place in the boys' mess a plate with his name on it, and the date, and the words, faithful unto death. I hope someday you may be able to come and see it there. Signed, Captain Robert Lawson of HMS Chester, to Mrs. Lily Cornwall, Jack's mother.
I think my wounds are getting better. There are about a dozen of them. It's not much fun to stay in bed, but at least I can write a letter without worrying about censorship. It's pretty rough out there, surrounded by mud and bodies, never quite sure how long it will be before they get you. We had to sleep one night in an open field with German shells landing nearby. Gas shells and shrapnel got me, and I still have bits stuck in my face. I got sent to the clearing station with the other casualties, but we had to wait a few days for a ship. It's good to be back on regular, reasonable meals. It was a bit of a shock when a bomb went off outside the hospital, but the only damage was to a couple of doors.
Well, we're supposed to do 5 days on the front and then 5 resting. But when the weather hots up, that's all forgotten and we just carry on. It gets a bit smelly in the hot weather. Of course, it's not just the people, it's horses as well. I can't say any more. Well, we had Sunday dinner yesterday. Perhaps not quite as we know it, and certainly no seconds. It was bully beef stew, but only 2 potatoes between 30 of us. Still, we can always rely on army biscuits.
They wake us up at 4 in the morning, but it takes a few hours to get everything ready to move on. We don't always travel in comfort, but I was lucky enough to get a seat in the cattle truck. It was still a bit chilly after a 6-hour journey. We can get very wet while we're waiting around with a full pack, waiting for the next march. There's a lot to carry around, what with 150 rounds of ammunition, clothing, ground sheet, emergency food supplies, mess tin, cleaning stuff, soap and all that. Now we've got field dressings and masks as well. Oh, and don't forget the rifle. I sometimes wish I had a blanket though.
Dear Geraldine, I'm sorry I've not written before. I've been a bit busy exchanging news with Fritz. I've just had a bit of a lie down while I watched a few bombs landing around us. It was a bit of a muddy bed with some snow for a blanket, but it was all right. They tried to get us twice this evening, but I'm still here. I often wonder how you're all getting on, and I should like to hear. Seems a very long time since I saw you last year. I'm not allowed to tell you much, so best wishes for the new year, and remember me to your friends.
Dear Alfred, thanks very much for your letter. We are in the trenches most of the time now. We have to share them with some pretty battered up blokes who will never see the light of day again. There just isn't time to get them properly underground. Our little dugout was flooded out. The water was over our knees at one point in a very heavy thunderstorm.
Dear Mr. Arkwright, I will not be writing to you again as another man has invited me to live with him. He has a good job and will be able to look after me so that I no longer have to go out to work. It wouldn't have been so bad if you'd been home on leave like the other men, but because you're a prisoner of war, you've been away for a very long time and I don't know if I will ever see you again. My new man is not interested in our children, so they will have to live in the orphanage. They will have a better life there than the one I have been able to give them. Best regards, Edith Armstrong.
My dear mother, if you are reading this, It is a sure sign that I have not been privileged to come through the challenge laid before our nation. Remember that you can be proud to have given your only son in the defence of our country. And I promise you that I have been honourable to my last breath.
Come on in then. Come on, lad.
Come on.
All right, come sit down.
Come on.
Come on, as the lad.
You come and sit on this chair here, Joe. It'll be all right. Sit yourself down.
He's not saying much, is he, could he?
I know, Joe will be just fine. He just needs to get over his wounds.
Oh, is he wounded?
In his head he is. In his head. Seeing Mr. Seymour shot right in front of his eyes, and on an Armistice day of all days. Well, it was too much for him. It turned his brain, it did.
I see. So what's he going to do when his army pay runs out?
Oh, Lord only knows. Before the war, he worked at the baker's, delivering bread and cakes all round Ivybridge on his bike.
Well, that's nice work.
Oh, Joe really enjoyed it. Do you think there'll be any work at the mill?
I really don't know.
He just needs time. Time heals all wounds. We'll be all right, won't we, Joe? Joe? Joe!
Oi! Who do you think you are?
Try to make Martin Base Jordan!
Joe! Joe! 'Tis me!
Oh,
'Tis your
dear,
mum.
Mrs. Bates.
'Tis your Joe, now calm yourself down, calm yourself down. 'Tis only the horses, Joe. Come on, sit back on the chair, boy. Come on, keep calm.
You remember, don't you, son? Back in 14, just after the war broke out. You remember, we went to Kingsbridge to see the horses on the quay. Must have been thousands of them. They were all there for the army to inspect, to see how many they could take for the war. We've never seen so many horses before. Beautiful they were. Carriage horses, hunters, hacks, plough horses, every sort of horse you'd ever seen. All the shops were shut. Everyone turned out to see such a wonderful sight. Splendid animals they were, being loaded onto the trains at the station. They were all being taken to Beaufort Camp to be trained for the field artillery. Then they were off to war. Just like you were, Joe. Just like you were.
All people were devious with their horses. I could tell you a funny story my Wally told me.
Oh, go on, Ethel, tell us.
Well, you know as my Wally works up the paper mill.
Yeah?
So the management heard that the military were coming, and didn't they say to him, take one of the best horses, go hide it under the viaduct?
Oh, I like that, Ethel. Come on, Joe, let's go home and have a nice cup of tea. Come on, you're all right.
Oh, good to see you again, Mr. Westlake.
Nice to see you too, Ollie.
How are you?
Not so bad, thank you.
Have you heard anything of Joe lately?
He's got his old job back at the baker's. Everybody's been so worried about you and the boys.
Oh, well, we're back in Devon now, sir. All 5 of us.
Is that all that's left of you when they let you go?
Well, as you know, they ran the battalion down, not replacing men as they left. So by June this year, there was only one officer and 24 of us men left.
Blimey.
So, we're back in Devon now. And do you know what?
What?
When we arrived back at Exeter station yesterday, there was no one there to greet us. They'd all forgotten about us.
What will you do now, Robert?
think I'll stay on in the army. I like the life.
Oh.
Really, I do.
Or wasn't it all simply dreadful out there?
Well, it was war. And yes, it was grim. But not all the time.
Can you explain? I know you don't like to talk about it, but...
Well, we had dry trenches as well as those stinking mud-filled pits around Eden. And we were only on the front line for a few days at a time, you know. 3 days at the front, then back to a comfy billet for a bath and a clean-up. And we were well fed. Well, most of the time, anyway. And did we have some laughs? Oh, we had plenty of laughs, as well as a tragedy.
If you say so.
Nancy, you won't be embarrassed by what I'm about to say.
I mean, yes, Robert. Try me.
Well, if it wasn't for the war, I think I'd still be a virgin. So many of the men, I expect.
Robert Harper Wesley. French whores, was it?
Belgium, actually.
Robert, do you think we'll ever get back to normal?
Well, I saw Joe Bates the other day. He's still pretty shaken up. Mrs. Bates insists he's getting better. Wally will have his job back at the mill. I'm sure that they are all going to cope. Whether that means getting back to normal, I don't know.
Was it worth it, Robert?
Of course it was worth it. We won, Nancy. We won. That makes it all worthwhile.
Did we win, Robert? Did we really win? And if so, what did we win?
Yes, we won. And even Geoffrey Seymour's death, tragic as it was, that makes it worthwhile. All of the deaths. They all died so there will never be wars again. Don't you see, Nancy? They died to win the war, to end all wars.